Over the past weekend, a video went viral showing police officers ramming through a crowd of people, running some of them over. People were actually knocked out of the way. They may have only run over one person, I'm not entirely sure, but this has ignited massive riots across Tacoma. And the media is saying it's a protest in which windows are smashed and fires are set, a protest. You know, they could have called what happened at the Capitol a riot. They called it insurrection. They choose the most extreme definition for those not on their side, I guess, and the lightest definition for those they support. Telling you this double standard is completely pointless. And this is really frustrating because at a certain point, what do? The media is just clearly lying about everything. Not necessarily everything, but they're framing everything in such a way to defend Antifa once again. On Joe Biden's watch, in Joe Biden's America, we are seeing massive crowds of black-clad terrorists setting fires, smashing windows. Let me tell you this. I don't care. I don't live in Tacoma, and these people vote for this over and over again. And, you know, maybe this should have been a lesson I learned a long time ago because they've all continued voting for it. But there's something special about the past couple of years. You see, we got a particularly big blast of Antifa in the past year with widespread violence, death threats, buildings being set on fire. They tried to torch a police building. I think this was in Seattle, or it was Seattle or Portland. And they barricaded the front and back doors because they wanted to cook the people alive inside the officers. They are psychopathic terrorists. And then what happened? They voted for it again. So I'm like, okay, at a certain point, who am I to judge? Am I going to come to your town and tell you what you must do? Look, man, if these people enjoy living in a city or a state where roving bands of black-clad terrorists try to murder people, and literally did in Portland, well, who am I to judge? I don't live there. I didn't vote. And I don't live in a big city anymore. I live out in the middle of nowhere. So I guess that was a lesson for me. When I lived in the Philly burbs, you know, that was, it was more impactful because I understood living in a city. I was in the suburbs. But I understood like, oh, man, I wouldn't want any of this. And if I lived here and was voting against it, I'd want some support. At this point, you know, and forgive me if it's a bit selfish, I moved out of that area and out to the middle of nowhere. And now I've had none of these problems. Ain't no riots out here. Everybody gets along. Big open property. Go out, do your thing. For the most part, you can go out and live your life like normal. Go to the restaurant. Small businesses are all pretty much open. Everything's been chill. And so a lot of the problems that even I've been complaining about or highlighting in the past year or so was really just urban centric. And the solution? Get away from the cities. I got more space now. You know, it's fantastic. We go to the shooting range. We can go skateboarding and do whatever we want. Mind our own business. Kind of like it. Yeah, I grew up in the city, so maybe I just never had that perspective. But now I'm looking at these cities and I'm just thinking, well, if these people want Ted Wheeler, if they want Kate Brown, if they want Joe Biden, and under Joe Biden's America, nothing's getting done. Under Joe Biden's America, he's sending out federal authorities to beat and attack these people. Well, then they clearly like what they're doing. And that's why it's really crazy when people say stuff like, you know, peaceful divorce. And I don't mean crazy as in wrong. I mean as in like, maybe that makes sense. It's weird, right? I don't want the country to break up. I don't like the idea. I like America. I like it for what it is. I like the fact that we disagree. But there is something radically different when you have people who live in a city and they're cheering for roving bands of people smashing and destroying everything. Well, then maybe, you know, what we want as people are radically different. And this leads us down a dark path unless we do have some kind of reform. You know, I think peaceful divorce is interesting. People have brought that up. But maybe it jumps too far. Maybe there's something else, just like, you know, I don't know, more state control of their laws or something, less federal authority to dictate what certain states can do, and we can remain in the union. But look, if you don't like living in a city that does this, you have to leave. I know it's not easy. Not everybody has the money to do so, but sometimes you have to leave. I've mentioned it before, but think back to the colonial era when people in Europe were like, I can't be here. I would rather crash land on a barren shore and just build up my own cabin. And they did. That's crazy. Someone had to go there and start building stuff. There was nothing there. The Pilgrims almost died because they had no food and they were saved by Native Americans. Hence the story of Thanksgiving. But look, Let me read the story, and I'll mention one more thing. I've never lived in Pennsylvania. I'm just going to say that right now as a statement of fact. What people need to understand about New Jersey is that New Jersey is a great suburb for a couple different states, for Pennsylvania and for New York. Okay, I've never lived in Pennsylvania, but the Philadelphia suburbs, there's a river, and on the other side is New Jersey. I lived in New Jersey. New Jersey was awful. I left New Jersey. Here's the story. They say protests erupt overnight in Tacoma after officer drove into crowd. For those who woke up this morning feeling outrage, frustration, grief, heartbreak, or confusion, I understand and honor your feelings, the mayor said. The 58-year-old police officer who ran over at least one person and possibly struck others was placed on administrative leave, according to a statement released Sunday by the Tacoma Police Department. He had been with the department for nearly 30 years. They say this officer was seen driving into a crowd of demonstrators. That's not true. You see what they do when they lie. They want Antifa to get angry. They want them to go around smash. They want them to destroy everything. I think they don't want you living in cities, to be completely honest. Look at New York. They've destroyed the economy. They put up barricades or on the checkpoints at the tunnels and the bridges. They don't want you there anymore. They don't. They're lying about what this group was. Oregon Live. Police officer plows through crowd at Tacoma. Street race. They're not demonstrating. They were street racing. It's a big difference, huh? Here's the context. At least one person was injured after a police car plowed through a crowd of pedestrians. See what Oregon Live says? Pedestrians who were watching a downtown street race. The incident happened just before 7 p.m. when a crowd of about 100 people watched several cars spinning in circles in downtown street. It's called doing donuts. A police car arrived at the scene. Then it drove through the crowd after people tried to block the vehicle. Video posted on social media showed the police car drives over something or somebody. Another video from the same scene and posted to Twitter appears to show the vehicle driving over a person on the ground. Tacoma police spokeswoman Wendy Haddow told the News Tribune that police were notified shortly before 7 p.m. Saturday of the street racers. Haddow said the officer used his car's bullhorn to address the crowd. The crowd then began pounding on his windows, she said. That prompted him to speed out of the scene for his own safety. One person sustained cuts in the collision and was taken to a nearby hospital. City manager Elizabeth Pauley told the newspaper that the officer involved will be placed on leave. Pauley said the Pierce County Force Investigation Team will handle the case. All right. What should this guy have done? We've spent a year watching people get their cars smashed up, set on fire in one instance. In New York, they tried burning a police vehicle with cops inside of it. In the Pacific Northwest, they've tried murdering police. And here's a cop now surrounded by a large crowd of people. And he's like, nah, this one's on you. Hits the gas and peels out. Runs people over. Sorry, man, play stupid games. You know, if you were going to surround a vehicle, a police officer, and then he flees the scene and you get hit, why are you standing in front of a car? Do you understand the power of that? But take a look at what they do in the NBC. Demonstrators. They're now trying to push the narrative that the people who were surrounding the car were protesting police. They weren't. They were watching street racing and people doing donuts. They say in videos shared on social media, protesters, that's right, protesters, not insurrectionists or rioters, protesters, can be heard chanting "Free them all" and blocking roads as they march near the site where the incident occurred. Others can be seen overturning trash cans and lighting small fires, while a few smashed office windows. One video appears to show an American flag burned outside the county's jailhouse. You know, you reap what you sow, man. You get what you deserve. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. If I vote to have, a big sign put up in front of my house that says, Tim Pool lives here or whatever, I vote for it. I want that in front of my house. Why would it's normal. If I vote for the city to have a farmer's market and then a farmer's market appears, you get what you deserve. You vote for it, you get it. If you vote for something and then it happens, why am I going to complain about that? Now, I can say these people are dumb, people in these cities, but who am I to judge? Just don't live there if you don't like it. It sounds simple, doesn't it? I know, again, not everybody can. But seriously, if you live in a place that keeps voting for this stuff, at a certain point, I'm just going to be like, dude, look, I always tell people that actions speak louder than words. And most people claim to want things they don't want. This is true. Okay. It's mostly true. It's not absolute. But I've heard throughout my career, people saying, I really want to be a journalist. I want to travel the world and I want to cover these stories. And I was like, all right, here's what you do. Buy a plane ticket. What's a big story right now? Okay, buy a plane ticket there, go there, film. Well, I can't do that. What do you mean you can't do that? You said you want to travel the world, right? Do you have the money? Well, yeah, but I mean, I still got to pay rent and stuff. Okay, get rid of your apartment, sublet it, crash on sofas, fly to that country. No, but I like my apartment. And there it is. I've heard that over and over and over again. When I was traveling the world and working for Vice, I was working for Vice. I had no apartment. I was sleeping on my friend's couch. And I was saving all the money and sleeping on the couch. Because what I wanted more than anything was to travel around. And I didn't tell people I wanted. I literally just did it. And now I hear all the time, I really want to do what you do. Okay, get up early in the morning and work nonstop. Work nonstop for 3 years, excuse me, with no days off. And then some people say either Tim's lying, it doesn't work that much, or they're saying, oh, but that's not, we shouldn't have to do that. I don't care what you think you have to do. So let me slow down right back to this story. If you live in this place and you claim it's bad and you don't want these things and you don't vote for them and you don't want to be there, I'm just going to say this. You clearly want to be there more than you want to leave. Yeah, but I have a house. Right. You clearly prefer having the house as opposed, like you like having the house more than you hate the people destroying your city. It's that simple. You like living in the city more than you hate these people destroying your city. Because it ever got to a point where you were just like, I can't stand these people and I really don't want to be here anymore. And that sentiment outweighed the love of your home and job and business, you would leave. So I tell you this, actions speak louder than words. Some people say, I can't leave. That's not true. It's not. You can walk out the door right now and just walk and live in the woods. And then some people say, but I have a family and kids. Yes, it's the same thing. You want to make sure your kids have a safe home and food and school more than you want to get them away from this environment. I'm not saying it's wrong to feel that way. I'm saying that a lot of people are like, but I have kids and I can't abandon, blah, blah, blah in their school. Yes. What you're really saying to me is that you've laid all of these pieces out, pros and cons, and you've said it is better that my family is here in this Antifa city with constant riots and insane politics. It's better than leaving because then they might miss school. It'll be harder to feed them. You see the point? Too much in our society, luxury is desirable. It's desired. And I understand some people say feeding your kids isn't a luxury. Okay. Making sure, like knowing there's food for your kids is more desirable than keeping your kids away from psychotic politics and these threats and these riots. And I mean that's like literally like it is. If people are like, I'm not going to risk my kid's life. Okay, just stop and think about what that means like from a mathematical standpoint. If you were to quantify everything in your life with a positive or negative point, like +1, -1, then you would say, as much as I don't like what's happening in my town, it is a net positive for my family and my children, because if we were to leave, it would be a net negative across the board for all of them, and I can't assume that risk. I can respect that's why you stay. I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm just saying you clearly prefer being there. That's it. And until we get to the point where people are like, I have to leave because my children are at risk, that's when the city will truly fall apart. But for the time being, so long as people choose the luxury over standing up against Antifa. Not necessarily luxury, but like access to resources. I'll put it that way. Still kind of a lot luxury, though. The city will maintain itself. Antifa will grow worse. And either the police will finally do something or it'll stop. And then it'll get too much. And then people will start leaving. And that's when the city falls apart. I wouldn't be surprised if we're at that point because I know a lot of people who are fleeing these cities, who are leaving, who don't want to be there. And, I hear more and more stories every day. I get emails from people saying they don't want to be involved in this. Now, look, the main point here is not to talk about your family and all that stuff. It's talk about how they're calling this a protest, right? Let me jump to the next big breaking trending story here on the internet. Jimmy Dore interviewed the Boogaloo boy, and boy is our leftists and establishment leftists angry. Well, I should say, actually, I think it's only the establishment leftists who are angry because Jimmy he's an actual leftist, but he's an honest one. And that's why, we often agree on things. I consider myself to be more of like a left libertarian, center left moderate type. But Jimmy's definitely leftist, Medicare for all, ban private healthcare and all that stuff. But he's honest about his opinions, who he interviews. So he interviews this guy and we get this. Jimmy Dore says, I interviewed a member of the Boogaloo Boys. I was completely floored when he said he was pro-LGBTQ, pro-Black Lives Matter, anti-police brutality, anti-racism, anti-ICE, anti-war. WTF? Radicalized Michigan anarchist seeks unity with the left. Why? Could it be that, well, Jimmy said Boogaloo boys, the Boogaloo boys are not far right, but the media keeps saying they are. Pretty sure pro-LGBT, pro-Black Lives Matter, and protesting racism. So listen, the Boogaloo boys came out and one person was wearing a Black Lives Matter sweater. One person had the guy speaking had a rainbow flag. They are not conservatives. They are not right wing. They are anarchists of all different ideological persuasion for the most part. I wonder why it is that the media keeps lying about what the Boogaloo boys represent. It was Ryan Devereaux, a journalist, I believe it was with The Intercept. He was previously with The Guardian. He said, I believe it was with The Guardian. He said that at one of these protests, when the Proud Boys walked past the Boogaloo boys, one of the Boogaloo boys yelled that the Proud Boys were boot-licking statist cucks. I'm pretty sure being anti-Proud Boy, being pro-Black Lives Matter is not right-wing in any sense of the imagination. So how are these people now considered far-right? Vosh V says, Jimmy is a big fan of yours. This is a bad take. I'm confused as to what Vosh means. Count Dankula says, the actual views stated by a group are obviously a bad take, Vosh. I agree. We should get CNN's take on this first for truth. I'm not entirely sure what's a bad take about Jimmy Dore actually interviewing someone and hearing what they literally believe. But we live in a world now where Wikipedia, the opinions, not even facts. Wikipedia is now a tabloid. This is the craziest thing about Wikipedia. It used to be a good faith attempt at aggregating information. Now it is a tabloid. Let me show you why. Boogaloo movement, says Wikipedia. Their adherents, and often referred to as Boogaloo boys, is a loosely organized far-right, anti-government, and extremist political movement in the U.S. The movement has also been described as a militia. Boogaloo adherents say they are preparing for or seek to incite a second American Civil War, which they call the Boogaloo. Boogaloo has been used on 4chan, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. The movement consists of pro-gun, anti-government groups. The specific ideology of each group varies, and views on topics such as race differ widely. Some are white supremacists or Nazis. Groups who believe that the impending unrest will be a race war. There are also groups that condemn racism and white supremacy. Now, why did they call it far right? What about it makes it far right? What does far right even mean? If some of these people are far left, what? Makes no sense. Here they say, adherents use Boogaloo, including variations, so as to avoid social media crackdowns, to refer to violent uprising against the federal government or left-wing political opponents. If they're in favor of Black Lives Matter and they're calling the Proud Boys boot-licking statist cucks, how is that rising up against the left? You see what this is? It's opinions. Opinions. Wikipedia has started aggregating opinion pieces from blogs and vlogs and listing them as fact. This is not what encyclopedia is ever supposed to be. And now Wikipedia has become a nonsensical tabloid. I mean, it really is just that case. When you have this disparate, shattered media ecosystem, Wikipedia can't function. Wikipedia thrives off of other people writing articles. But when a news organization says the Boogaloo boys are far right and their only justification is that a guy's wearing a tactical vest and a gun, that makes no sense because the left wears those too. Now, when we're talking about Antifa, they're typically dressed in all black. But there are still left-wing groups like you get John Brown Gun Club. They wear tactical vests and they walk around with guns as well. And people associate that with the far right. When the Boogaloo boys, I think they were, I can't remember where they were. They went out to some state capital, I think it was in Virginia, and people were claiming that they were right-wing militias, and they were like, they're wearing Hawaiian shirts. What about that is far right? And they were like, no, they disavowed all of it. Clearly, the media is not interested in telling you the truth of the Boogaloo boys. That, for one, I don't think it's fair to say, based on my research, that they're trying to incite a civil war, more so that they think a civil war is inevitable. And thus, they are coming out and preparing for it, and they are very anti-government. That's why they shake hands with Antifa. There's a video where the Boogaloo boys are shaking hands with Antifa. And the Antifa guy says, you stood with us today, and so, we support you. And there's a post from a journalist where the Boogaloo boys call the Proud Boys boot-licking statist cucks. Is that left or right wing? Apparently that's far right. They don't like Donald Trump. They protest Donald Trump, yet we're being told they're far right. Here's Wajahat Ali says, well, good for Jimmy Dore. He found a profitable shtick for himself. Sucks for all the people who can't see through it. Also, Boogaloo boys are violent far-right extremists whose members killed cops earlier this year. Wajahat is just another establishment tribalist. He doesn't care about telling you the truth. The truth is nuanced. There are probably some Boogaloo boys who are violent and far right. I don't know how you define far right. We're talking about laissez-faire capitalism, I guess. Typically in the media, when they say far right, they mean ultra traditionalist and authoritarian. But the Boogaloo boys are anything but authoritarian. So much so, they're not even doing what Antifa does. Antifa claims to be anti-authoritarian, but they use violence to push their politics. Boogaloo boys don't even do that. Boogaloo boys are a bunch of like anti-government, ideologically left individuals. They're mostly anarchists, and they're probably economically right. So what is that? I don't know, libertarian, I guess? Generalist libertarian? All that matters, in my opinion, what I've seen from Boogaloo boys, these are people who think a civil war is coming. And many of them probably do want it to happen. But the idea of the Boogaloo started as people saying, like, everything we were seeing was going to lead to a civil war, and they were calling it Boogaloo because the joke was Civil War II, American Boogaloo. Like, you know, what's that movie? I can't remember the name. Electric Boogaloo? Whatever. I don't know. You get the point. We've talked quite a bit about that movie. So some people think they see something coming. I'm actually of the opinion that we are in the second Civil War period. But let me explain. First, as I often preface this, because I know people like to take things out of context, this narrative of a civil war didn't originate with Boogaloo boys or with me. It originated in mainstream media. And we read the media. It influences us. Then many people started talking about them, that they believe that we were on track for a civil war. I, following up from these articles, thought the same thing. When I say that we're in a civil war period, what I mean is, if right now everything stopped and we all came together and held hands under a rainbow, no one would say there was ever a civil war. They would say it was just political turmoil. But if this escalates into hot conflict, more so than we've already seen, because we already had people storm the Capitol, which is like, come on, like we're there. Okay. If it escalates from here, then people will claim the Civil War started in 2015 with Donald Trump. They'll say, you know, the Civil War period, second Civil War period of America, 2015, Donald Trump gets elected. And they might even go back to Occupy Wall Street and talk about the rise of critical race theory. So we are in we are in Civil War territory. When people storm into a Capitol building, and many of them are yelling, this is our 1776, because they're crazy, we're there. Now, it doesn't need to go hot conflict. What people need to realize is that they keep trying to base everything off of what they've seen in movies or what they've read in books. You have to imagine the first time a war was fought with muskets, people were like, what is this? You know, we're used to fighting with like on horseback with plate mail and swords and bows and arrows. And then all of a sudden some dudes show up with cannons and musket fire, and the musket balls are ripping through their plate armor. And it was like totally different from what they'd ever experienced. Now, because what we're seeing isn't shocking in your face, it is fourth and fifth generational warfare. Fifth generational being pure propaganda. People don't understand what's happening. Wajahat Ali comes out and lies. Why? Well, let me clarify. Or he's wrong. Perhaps he's lying. Perhaps he's wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He wants to push a narrative. He doesn't want you to understand nuance, or he doesn't understand it himself. And that's possible. That's the simple solution. Many of these people on the left have no idea what they're talking about. I think it's fair to say. So when you watch CNN and you're grossly misinformed because they're not interested in telling you the truth, they just want to make money. Well, there you go. You get a better deal with, say, the New York Times, right? So I'll tell you this. One thing I've been focused on very heavily is setting up timcast.com for memberships. Why? So I don't have to worry about getting banned or anything like that. And I can just say what needs to be said. I've maintained that for some time. There are a few subjects YouTube will outright ban me on for discussing. It doesn't really impact me because I'm a bit too milquetoast for that anyway. But there is a name I can't say, and I have had videos taken down. So we're trying to create a subscription platform at timcast.com where you can get access to behind the scenes content, more fun stuff, and uncensored discussions on certain issues. And it appears to be going really well. So thank you to everybody. This is the point. CNN and many of these companies rely desperately on building audience, on convincing you that you need to watch them. Why? To sell ads. And if you don't watch, they don't make money. Now, the New York Times is still pretty bad, but not the worst, but they're pretty bad. The worst would be like, Vox and CNN. The New York Times operates primarily on subscription now, which gives them some more leeway, but they're still worried about publishing a story that would offend their members and then losing members. That's probably because they're a massive corporation. and they have to pay employees. Timcast is not so big. I do have a decent amount of employees here, but we had a session where, we had Dave Smith and Luke Rudkowski just rag on Donald Trump for like 45 minutes. And I would say I ragged on Trump about half as hard as they did and defended him a little bit. We did a segment where it was me and Luke. It was Luke and Ian arguing that Trump was corrupt, and me and Jack Murphy arguing that Trump isn't actually that bad, but he does have problems. Not a completely staunch defense of Trump. We're trying to be honest, but you're going to hear all of this. Like Luke's on the show and Luke rags on Trump all the time. I'm not here to placate anybody. I'm here for honest opinions and for facts and to help you understand what's going on. Some people want to hear nothing but praise for Donald Trump, but nobody deserves nothing but praise. So when you follow someone like Jimmy Dore and he tells you, we want these left-wing things, we like these politicians, but these politicians are bad, I trust him. When you follow someone like Wajahat Ali, who gives you a plastic, generic take, Boogaloo boy's bad, don't look into him at all, and he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's just another part of this tribalist establishment structure that wants to prop up the Democrats and mainstream media to make money. I think if you watch Jimmy Dore, you're going to get a heterodox opinion, and that, in my opinion, is more important. Clearly, watching someone like me, I'm a fairly moderate individual, slightly left-wing on a lot of political and social issues. That's right. I've long maintained the bakery thing, make the cake and customize the message. I've always had fairly traditionally liberal positions, but it's very heterodox in that I think the left has gone insane. I think people like Wajahat Ali are bad people. I think that there's a lot of leftists who are faking it and lying and just trying to skew whatever they can to fit their narrative instead of supporting an ideology. And then I see Jimmy Dore, and Jimmy Dore also heterodox, calls out the Democrats all day, but has left-wing political opinions further, to the left than I do. You can tell when someone's being honest when their takes are following principles and not tribes. But I digress. This is all about, what was happening with the protests. So the last thing I'll mention, and we'll sign off on this one. You've got Antifa marching through the streets, and they're still being called protesters once again. And this is Biden's America. Is the media going to come out and say it's Biden's fault? Is Biden going to deploy the troops? Let me give you one last thought on this. Tom Cotton came out and said, send in the troops when there was ongoing riots across this country. And the New York Times forced a guy, he was basically fired for publishing it. It was outrage. They apologized, but and everyone was furious. Don't you send in the military to stop riots? Now I have people like Vosh who defended 25,000 National Guard being deployed to Washington, D.C. because of the right-wing riots. How weird is it? Look, if you want to send in the military because there's riots, I got no problem. When the National Guard got deployed to D.C., I said, wow, look at that. The National Guard's being deployed. When they upped it from a few hundred to 25,000 armed, authorized to kill, I was like, whoa. I wouldn't support that even in the Pacific Northwest. And what I said about Tom Cotton's call was, what would they even do? That would probably create a lot of problems. So if someone's going to stand on principle, you will hear them do it. Many of these leftists don't. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.